to show you some info, you can step aside.
We'll open this up in about 5-10 minutes.
Well, your letters are a lot longer than yours.
I turned those into one-liners.
You're good. I started reading through them, I'm like, I can't read this all on my phone.
Okay. Welcome to our work meeting for August 9th. We're gonna jump right into this review of this evening's agenda. Any comments, changes?
Just so you're aware, the Utah Warriors will be here this evening in
Okay.
recognition to present a signed ball to council. I'll probably introduce Tom and then he'll come up and
Okay.
present the ball.
Want to do that during the recognition?
Yeah.
We do have those two girls coming in to give
The Girl
got
Scouts.
it.
I think so.
Yep. Okay, we got the email there right up, right? We did get that right.
Hey, where are we sitting with that, flag monument that the, DECA was gonna do with Winterton?
They haven't, I don't know
Okay.
if she went away to school.
She
or-
did, I don't know, what's, okay, I'll follow.
Yeah, we had suggested that they do some fundraising
Okay.
to help pay for it. And as far as I know, Anthony hasn't heard anything back from her. It's been a while. Good question though.
I know our parents, I'll talk to her.
Yes.
Okay. Future agenda items. I will say joint meeting, we do need to have one discussion at the joint meeting. Basically, it's gonna be, just to put it out there, it's going to be just, we're not specifying where or anything at this point. We just need to create, if we are gonna apply for this HTRZ zone, we do have to create the zoning.
Zoning for them.
We have to have.
So it would be
zoning
discussing what that would
tool,
look
what
like.
it would like to put it in that toolbox, not assign it to a certain area yet, just have it.
Available.
That's to get that into, just, then later down the road, we would discuss where, cause there actually could be a couple of locations. So, we just want that, kinda like what we did with the LPMPC. And that, a tool in the toolbox that just is there. So that'll mainly be the topic that night, I don't know of any other topics that night.
Will we have a forum?
We have quorum,
August 30th.
I can be here there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, will you have the sports entertainment? You're not here.
I could have the SE zone ready. It's an overlay zone as well, so we could
That'd be good.
discuss both.
Okay.
It'd be good to have the planning commission.
No, he's in Portugal.
It'll be 2 in the morning where I'm at, so I could.
You can log
possibly,
in. Just log in. What's the problem?
One of us can.
They go to bed late there anyway.
I'll
They don't
probably
need dinner till
still
like
be
8,
adjusting
so,
to
you
the
know.
time, so I don't feel like
The other thing Sherry asked me to bring up is the educational committee we talked about, getting that, like, let's get a first meeting going, not with one staff, we want to sign to make that happen. Then she also did talk to, Andy Perucci, and then talk to a couple of school board, it's now being, maybe we do a kind of a regional one, to where we grab, we be sure to grab the Bluffdale guy, cause I don't know if he'll come if it's, but just Riverton to us and Blackshire, it's just those 3 cities right now, so.
Do we want the first one to include that, or we just wanna set and then?
I think we set a meeting with JSD and then,
Let's get it, I can find.
and
Yeah, I
invite
think
them
we-
to it,
Yeah,
yeah. And I spoke to Sherry right after you, and I think it's a regional base, we'll get more voices at the table. Because Riverton's having similar issues with a lot of the same things we're running into.
just be able to work through them
Yeah.
together. We don't
And,
have the same
and a
solution.
closer timeframe and a quicker timeframe.
So I think that is Teddy and Sherry on that for us, so we can just,
And I don't know if we wanna loop in, traffic or, you're doing traffic with the city, right? Not with Jordan, but we probably need to download on that, cause I know traffic issues are huge.
and I think we set that.
Yes,
I think we set that as a quarterly set.
pretty much that entire Mountain Ridge, Ridgeview and the
Sentinel,
school
yeah.
thing and all the roads and all the intersections and everything,
From JSD
it's all
was supposed
wrong.
to be on it.
The school board, then we were just gonna invite their staff, so I mean, at least for sure Daryl and Bryce
Bryce, and then,
and,
who's the
Brian
other-
Barnett.
Brian.
Brian.
Those would be the 3 that touch us and
Isn't there another?
They can forward it to their staff. I'm
Yeah,
not
they can
sure.
forward it, you guys, they can forward it to their staff who they want to be involved.
Right.
There might be, we'll have to see who else covers Riverton.
And are we thinking quarterly?
Quarterly.
Okay.
Let's have Shelley.
See if we can get like a static day and time and then go from there.
Love Shelley.
Okay.
Let's get that on the, school starting now, it's gonna be, I think we try to get.
It'll be easier too, cause we'll,
Okay. Any other future agenda items?
Blackridge, let's, maybe something in October-ish,
Probably shooting for September.
September, okay.
Yeah.
Alright.
I don't know if we need to do this as a council necessarily, but a discussion about the Sentinel Ridge Park and the HOA situation. That's, apparently the HOA isn't being responsive, they're not answering calls, they're not gonna be meeting with residents.
That's still
And
the
I'm
builder
just-
HOA, right? Is it in the builder control?
Master
Oh.
HOA.
So I'm still going to reiterate that concern I have that turning a park back over to a HOA that isn't being responsive about the issues that are going on in the park, they're not even being responsive to anything. I'm opposed to that. It's just the whole reason I don't want it to do that. I know it saves us money, but we're just creating a bigger problem for the I mean, 5 people on that street right behind them have put their houses up for sale in the last month. They're like, we're out of here. That's not a good thing for our city, so we need to have a update and further conversation about that, so.
Okay. Council discussion of future citizen recognitions. I don't have anything else right now. Okay. Okay, we'll move on to 2.1, discussion regarding cost sharing of school safety shuttles at Oak Leaf. Bryce, you gonna take?
Yeah, Blake's gonna take the brunt of it, and I'll have part of it too, we'll kind of share this one.
I'm identifying as Bryce for a moment here, so, feeling younger already. Anyway, okay, so this is a follow-up discussion to a board meeting with the Jordan School District from last night, to discuss the safe walking route and / the potential safety shuttle, Oak Leaf Elementary and the Hidden Oaks stop. So, in case anyone's wondering, this is the Main Street project generally highlighted, but impacted by the safe walk route. So, just a little, what the current issue is that the sidewalk necessary to have the kids that live in this area get to the school over here needs to run along the south side of Main Street. And we'll get into some discussions if you want to about why we don't recommend the north side, but the south side, as you know, we've been working with property acquisition and eminent domain. It's been held up for a while. The contractor received access last Monday is the first time they worked on site. And so we found out with the delays that the safe sidewalk or the safe walking route is not gonna be open in time for the school to start. So we've been working with the school district, Bryce has been working, HPD's been working with the actual school, Oakley, to address the safe walking concern. And this was the route that was proposed last year and was in place last year. It was temporary for 1 year. It's 3.64 miles, 1/4 mile of it does not have sidewalks, all the rest is either on the trail or on the sidewalk. So it's a fairly small portion of the walk route.
Do we have any data about how many kids from this area actually took that walk route? I mean, Blake, do we have any data about
Kids are
that?
affected?
So I know we have
I don't know how
less
many
than-
kids were walking 3.64 miles to school
At the-
back and forth every day.
At the intersection of 64 Hunter West and Herriman Main Street or Herriman Highway, we had less than 10 students this last school year. That is with the safety shuttles in place. Last school year.
With that distance, I imagine you won't see much more.
And as from per the meeting last night, that bus was full at 100+ kids, but not all of them were designated for non-bus, right, or for that area.
We'll get into some of
Okay.
that, some of those things in a minute here. But yeah, this is the current issue. I think everyone's pretty up to speed on what the current issue is. So the safe walk route, temporary safe walk route, safest walking route has been identified here. And then, these are numbers I received from the school district today. So last year there was just one bus. This year there are proposing two buses that are just strictly dedicated for this. And then there's another bus or a couple of buses that already are carrying kids that are eligible to be riding the bus, but then they'll pick up kids along the way that aren't eligible to ride the bus. And so that has been a ratio of how many kids are participating, I think, is the way that's working out. So the total cost is $734.22 per day to run the bus. And then I went and printed out the school schedule and found out how many days were in each month, estimated the total cost, and then the city's portion of that cost. So you can see numbers there provide that. The school district in their meeting last night identified these 4 items that I've put on the side here. They want the city to pay for half, if there's going to be a shuttle, they want the city to pay for half the cost of the shuttle. They want us to prepay for 30 days. And pay 30-day increments after that. Enter into an MOU, and in that MOU, it needs to state that we'll provide 1 month notification. So we'll provide, when we know the sidewalk's gonna be done, we provide notification, and then we have to pay for that extra, that next 30 days or next month. And then
Question on that, even though the sidewalk's done, construction's still active.
That is
that's
correct.
Is
We'll
that
get
a
into that in a minute too.
Okay, alright,
You're saying all the right things.
Okay.
Cause yeah, it's more than just a sidewalk, there's
Yeah.
still stuff happening all on it. So, to give a little background, just wanted to run through this really quick. The school site was actually identified in the Hidden Oaks land use plan, and the school district was negotiating with the Dancy family to acquire this property. There's a policy that the school district has in place that they won't acquire a site until they get a letter from the city that says we're good with the site you've chosen. And so that letter was provided on January 11th,
Those are
2018.
important words though, we're good with the site you've chosen. We haven't selected the site, they've chosen the site.
We've never selected a site. We've given them sites where, we've match made and said, this property owner has property here, and it's big enough for a school, meets your requirements, go meet with them. This is what we show.
to my understanding, it was between this school or West Jordan School and busing the whole community up.
So, when I was meeting with the staff, right around this time, a little bit after this time, they provided me with a site plan for a school in Teton Ridge, off of 6400 West, and said, would the city provide a letter for this site? I brought it back to the city manager at the time and said, what do you wanna do? This is over by Athlos, it's by everything else where all the issues were. There was no road there either, no utilities for that location. And they said we wouldn't support that location at that time. It was too close to all the other schools that we had in the area, and we'd still have walking around issues. So we said we wouldn't support that site, and that's when we said, you already have a site over here,
Build that
let's
one.
do this.
But I also, like Teddy, I have heard too that it came down to us or West Jordan, we didn't want our kids bused at the time.
Out of the community.
Out of the community of West Jordan.
And we
Yeah,
don't heard
okay.
any of that discussion. I just know.
That's what I think that's what Sherry told me, if I'm not mistaken.
Not naming names or calling anybody out here, it was reported to me that, the understanding of the school board is that Herriman City requested that this school be built in this location instead of another location in the city. This was where we wanted it to go. That's the way that it's being represented.
So, like I said,
Not my
it was the school site that was shown on
It doesn't matter,
64.
on it,
And
let's,
it's history, we don't wanna get into that too much,
We
but I just
don't,
wanna give a
yes.
little background to when this was approved, so. good point.
In January of 18.
Then, there's the site right there. Then we provided a letter, outlining this is when the access is gonna happen, utilities will be there at this date. And we did in that letter request prepayment of impact fees. I went and calculated, well, there was a letter that was provided that had a attachment with the impact fees, but all we ever paid attention to at the time was stormwater and water. We never did calculate or ask for transportation fees at the time. It was never anticipated we'd collect them. The school district was never asked for those transportation impact fees. But I added them on here for this one, to show that the ones that are in blue were waived. The ones that are in bold black were paid. And so you can see and then there was some deductions of $300,000 for some work that was done on Herriman High, I believe. It was all before I got here, but everything was kind of in a, what do you call it, piggy bank, saying, oh, we're keeping track here, but nothing was ever transferred here or there. So we went through when Ridgeview, Mountain Ridge, and Hidden Oaks were all being done, and said, okay, let's tally all this up, get it done, write a letter, say we're done, we're clear, we're zeroing everything out. So we zeroed everything out at that point. And they paid, the school district paid at that time, $600,000 and change. I got it right here. $600,482.04. They paid that, and that zeroed everything out, and we waived the $300,000 or deducted it because of some work that was done, I think, on 6,000 west and 118 south at the time.
There's just one major question that has to be asked. I mean, this is almost 8 years here. First time I've ever even heard that we're waiving any of these impact fees for schools. I hate to ask why, because people who are here were doing weird things and whatnot, but do other cities do the same thing?
As I've talked to other cities, they're kind of all over the place. Some have them build roads and offset them with the impact fee that should be paid, that piece of the road. Some are waiving some fees and not others, so I'm not 100% sure on that question. I do know, I thought about that question coming up, because I knew it would. We did for Ridgeview, Mountain Ridge, and Hidden Oaks, we charged them the water and stormwater. The transportation, we were always kind of told not to charge for that, because it wasn't allowed state statute. As you know, we came and presented
Well, by
about a year ago. Administration at the time. So, we are gonna be charging it for the flex school, and that's the first one. We're gonna follow that process from here on out. The other thing to note is typical developments, they come in for a subdivision application, and then they come in for a building permit. And in when they do the subdivision application, they get approved for a preliminary plat. The plat comes through and gets approved, and when they go to record the plat, that's when we calculate the storm drain fee. The storm drain fee is paid at plat. And so all developments pay the storm drain fee at that time. And then when they pull the building permit is when they pay transportation, water, parks, police, fire, everything else. School districts don't go through that process. They have been going through the plat process on the flex school. State statute does say that they need to follow the land use regulations of the local municipality. But since we've never received a building permit application, I think that is a lot of the reason why we've never actually had a date of this is when we're asking for this fee. And so it's, process going forward is very clear and straight up, but in the past, that's why we're where we're at.
So when are impact fees due typically, or should they be due typically for a school to build?
For a school, so right now, we're just calculating it with plat for the flex school.
Would that be considered upfront, or is that, because that's before construction,
normal time.
right, okay. Did we make them post this payment prior to plat on Oakleaf?
Yeah, I believe we did, I think it was, I don't know if I need to look at the plats, because some of them did plats, most schools have not done plats in the past.
Okay.
If you look at their parcel lines, they're split right down the middle, and there's 2 or 3 parcels in each school. And I think that's not atypical for cities.
They, usually you pay the fee before you start construction.
Before a building permit is issued, but they don't come to the city for a building permit.
I just wanna clarify one thing. The waiving of an impact fee, is that an administrative function or is that a legislative function?
That is a council.
Your new policy follows that, so,
That
we
was never
dealt
brought
that,
to us before,
we-
ever.
So an
We
administrator waives
addressed that.
$6 million of revenue to the city without bringing it for the council? Are you kidding me?
no, I saw that this morning.
It's black.
So your policy probably did that, what, a year and a half ago, we talked about that. This would be coming, these kinds of things would come to you. All I have are the records, I don't know why they were not charging or charging. It's just what it is.
Okay, so that's the breakdown on the fees. Then the next letter, if you see the schedule here, might look familiar. This was the map that was provided. Many of these dates were missed. A lot of it was, we were working with the developer and we really had no teeth to require the developer to hold the timelines. And if you look at these dates between these letters, we had some interesting stuff going on in the world with supply chains, labor, and things shut down, just crazy stuff going on. And you can see that the end of the road, actually, piece of sidewalk we're talking about is way out here, not even part of what we're discussing. And then, January 10th, we provided a final letter. This is when we talked about utilities. The utilities weren't at the site, things were taking a little bit longer. We drafted this letter, sent it to the school district, and really emphasized that, hey, supply chain has been an issue. We're working as hard as we can, we're working with the developer. And actually, Ivory, they had a new project manager step in the middle of this, and it really helped out. We did get the road open at school, Ivory. So the current status, that's where we'll let Bryce go, but the delay of the project, property acquisition issues, the contractor was provided access July 31st. And general result of all of this was a delay in about 16 weeks of work. So, do you want to give us a bit on the current status of the project?
Yeah, so I'll kind of start at the beginning. So we received bids back, if you remember, from the project in January and issued a notice to proceed at the end of January for the contractor to get started. And part of that construction contract included deadlines for them to meet. One of them, which is not super crucial to this discussion, was a irrigation improvements to be improved by the irrigation season, which is generally mid-April. The second deadline that we put into the construction contract was to have the sidewalk completed in strategic areas of the project to allow the safe walk to walk along Herriman Main Street by August 1st. As you
It was in our
know,
contract?
that was in our construction contract with our contractor. They committed to having it built by August 1st.
Did we make that same commitment in contract to the school district?
There was no contract. We did say, hey, our contractor is on the hook to build this by August 1st. We're confident that they have the capability to do it, right? So there was a discussion with the school, Oak Leaf, that said, we believe that we can build this in time.
We didn't anticipate this delay. We had a letter from the property owner that we had an issue with because we were using corridor preservation funds to acquire the property. So we had a letter that said, oh, we're a willing seller. So we anticipated we wouldn't run into issues, but we ran into issues.
Yeah, so January 31st is when we send out the notice to proceed to the contractor to get started. Up until, and as we are all well aware, the property acquisition that is the majority of the section from 7300 West to Danzy Boulevard is what I'll call it. It's changed names a couple times, but we'll call it Danzy Boulevard, that goes down towards Oak Leaf Elementary. That section on the south side of the road are the properties that we have used eminent domain on, and that we went through the court process. None of us anticipated that big of a delay, a 4-month delay, like Blake said. So 16 weeks of the contractor not being able to access the property that is needed for the safe walk route to install the sidewalk on the south side of the road. We gained access, just like Blake said, last Monday. So the contractor's been there ever since that day, working on the property. Up until now, they have been working in other areas that they can. Like I said, it's not just a roadway widening project. There is irrigation improvements that need to be completed by a time. There are water line improvements. There are sewer improvements. There are more than just widening the road and putting the sidewalk in. And in a construction standpoint, it makes much more sense to run those utilities before the sidewalk is in, like water meters, sewer extensions, so you don't put in the sidewalk and then have to cut out the sidewalk to run a line to a house. So in the sense of sequence of items, usually the sidewalk comes towards the end of a project. in this case, we asked them to prioritize the sidewalk for certain areas so that we could enable the safe walk route. But because they've lost out on 4 months of work on that south side of the road, that's when we said, there's no way our contractor can make the original date that we had planned on due to this unforeseen delay with the property acquisition. Like Blake said, we didn't anticipate this big of a fight for the property acquisition because we did have a willing seller letter ahead of the project. Obviously, that doesn't get into the details of negotiation, and that we've discussed in other meetings and probably will discuss in future meetings as far as the negotiation goes. But yeah, once we realized, hey, there's no way this sidewalk can be built in time, that's when we alerted Jordan School District staff, and we started having a bigger discussion of, okay, if the sidewalk's not in, what are the options? And
When did we notify GSD?
it would have been June, late June, I would say. And then it took a couple weeks to kind of get everyone together and have a discussion. And so, yeah, as far as estimate from this day forward to getting the sidewalk in on the south side of the road, like I said, it would be great if we could just go in and put the base down and put the sidewalk in next week, right? But unfortunately, we first have to widen out the road, put in the curb and gutter to set the elevations of where the sidewalk's gonna go. And before that, we're hoping to run all the utilities to those properties that we weren't able to access so that we don't have to go back and redo the curb, redo the sidewalk. So our estimate on getting the sidewalk from 7300 West to Danzy Boulevard with all of those utilities and the proper installation would be around December time frame to get it done. And that's why on one of your first slides, one of Blake's first slides, the cost estimates were taking it to December.
Christmas is only 12 weeks away, in case anybody wanna know. 16 weeks is a huge time frame in construction, especially at that winter. They don't have any problems with asphalt.
So we're hoping to get the asphalt ahead of the winter. Usually we try to stop paving around mid-October. That's when temperatures start to drop. Concrete you can do in the winter. It requires a different mix and requires like heating blankets to help it cure properly. So you can place it in the winter. There's just some additional steps that have to be done to place it in the winter.
Is there anything to speed them up or increase work hours?
Yeah, so we could offer, there's a couple of options that we could
We
talk
offer them
about.
less than $28,267.
We could offer incentives. That is UDOT offers incentives for projects that, hey, if you can beat our deadline, we'll give you a certain amount of money every day if you can beat our deadline. That's not set up on the project, and it would be something new that we have done on another project that we're actually working on right now. The McCusin Storm Drain project actually has that feature built in. We could also ask them to work weekends, which wasn't in the original contract, but that may incur a cost to the city that we're asking them to do more. We have looked at, okay, if you've noticed, the north side of the road sidewalk is actually almost all the way in from Danzy Boulevard to 7300 West. They had no issues accessing that property. We own a good portion of that property and then just a few other property acquisitions. So we looked at, can you cross at 7300 West and just have them walk on the north side of the road, right? But in our discussions and HPD can jump in here too as well, in our internal discussions, we looked at that intersection and it is pretty precarious as far as being able to see far before the intersection. So if you can imagine, there's the curve that if you're traveling west, that is a pretty sharp curve, and with this project, we're actually gonna flatten out the curve because it's unsafe for the speed of the road, right before the intersection on the
Pull
east
that
side.
map up.
Yeah, that would be a good.
one
We'll
before
go
that.
back to the thing we look at that one, I guess.
I think you had one before.
The one,
The
the
very
first or second slide.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one right there. So that bend in the road right there, and then you can see how the proximity to 7300 West, so a driver won't see that intersection until after that curve. So that introduces, there's also, so that's a, what we'll call a horizontal curve, or a change in left to right, right? And then on the other side of the intersection, there's a couple of issues that we see there as well. There are dual entrances into High Country Road. There's kind of a bus stop there that complicates vehicles' access in and out of that area. It is very close, again, to the 7300 West intersection that there are off-angled intersections that we would not prefer to have a major pedestrian crossing near. And then additionally, just west of there, there are vertical curves or up-down curves ahead of getting to that intersection if you're traveling east from the west towards the intersection. Additionally, that's why it was never planned to cross there from the beginning, that Danzy Boulevard would be the location. There's no vertical issues, there's no curve issues, there isn't a signal there. But we were planning on installing reduced school speed zone with a crossing guard there. And it is the natural point where everyone can come and that we can put resources into a crossing. If we were to look at a crossing at 7300 West, it would be temporary. It would be until the sidewalk would be in right. But you would still have to put the same amount of investment into that crosswalk. As far as reduced school speed zone lights, a crossing guard, striping it as a school crosswalk should be striped. You could look at a temporary signal at that location until the sidewalk's completed. The cost of renting a temporary signal is around $4,000 to $6,000 a month. So if you're 3 to 4 months, you're about the same cost if you did install a temporary signal, and then you'd still have to transfer and install the permanent crosswalk at Dancy Boulevard. So
Is there gonna be a signal at Dancy?
not with this project, it is in our master plan to have a signal, and with this project, we're actually putting in the conduits so that the future signal, all they have to do is put in the poles and run the wire. But this project won't install a signal at that location.
Right, tell me, crossing them though,
Yeah,
still a construction
where are they gonna
zone.
cross?
Still a construction zone all the way through there. Tell me 6400 is not gonna be complete by next week.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
They're still gonna
correct.
be crossing in a construction zone, right?
Yes, so just like that red line shows, technically that whole thing will be a construction zone. And we haven't change ordered the project, like we said, 4 months of not accessing a portion of the property gives the right to the contractor to ask for a change order on completion date. Right now, the completion date is mid-December for the whole project, get everything done, not just the sidewalk, but everything done.
But we're not, I mean, how do you stripe something at 6400 right now, if its road's not there?
Yeah,
How do you
so,
stripe a crosswalk?
yeah, so there is one there today. There is a crosswalk there because there is a signal, there are buttons that you can click, right, and it will stop the traffic and you are able to walk across. But at the end of the
Right.
project, obviously, there will be sidewalk on every corner and there will be established, just like you said, the road will be brand new and will have the striping necessary for a school crosswalk.
Now, if we do the shuttle, if the shuttle operates, do we still have a crossing guard at that intersection?
Yes. You still have a school crossing.
Still school crossing.
You still have a safe
shuttle.
locator.
Yes,
It's not just those ones.
until
Yeah.
the,
That's what I'm saying, so there are other,
until the sidewalk's complete and Zach and Chief might be able, that's kind of like a placeholder crossing guard until we can cross them at Dancy, and then they would move there once.
so that's what I'm getting,
that-
it's not an either or, it's not a crossing guard or a shuttle, there's still gonna be a crossing guard no matter what.
We already are providing.
We're already
crossing.
planning on a crossing
There
guard
was
and a
not-
walking
so-
route.
There was not one there will be one there.
Because of the construction,
So-
we decided to add one there, and that way it would be staffed when we move it to Danville.
Yeah, it'll be in place. But you're right, it is at the end of
Last year we
Cron-
didn't have one.
construction.
That's
No,
right.
we
Okay.
didn't.
But last year wasn't under construction.
Yeah. How did we get the counts of crossing?
So we do an audit every year where we have substitute crossing guards go where they're not crossing to go and count how many students are crossing. So they'll go the hour before school and the hour after school where we have crossing guards. And we audit and we say, are there at least 10 students using this crosswalk? Cause that's
Is
the
it the
threshold.
threshold, 10 per crossing?
Yes, and that's not even necessarily for a crossing guard, that is just to establish a school crossing at all. So if we're below 10, we know, hey, that's time to pull off a crossing guard, that's driven by the state MUTCD or the traffic
The
control
amount of
device.
traffic and vehicles in that area during that
That's
time frame also.
That's not a city policy, you're saying
Yeah,
that's a
yeah,
city.
that's not a city policy,
state
that,
code.
that's established by the state.
State code enables UDOT to enact rules, and so that's a rule they've set. They've adopted a whole chapter to the MUTCD manual for
What's
school
the-
crossings.
What's the number of students we're crossing, or I mean, number of students in that, like where's the school zone at, like the school boundary, is it?
Yeah, the boundary, I think, goes down
It's like,
in the, if you have the staff report up, there's an exhibit that shows the school boundaries. It comes just under McHouston, I believe, and west, right? So everything
Covers up to the ridge.
east of 7300 West and McHouston, maybe a little bit lower than McHouston, goes to Butterfield. And everyone north of that area goes to Oakleaf. Well, the boundaries are for Oakleaf.
And this is a question for you, Daryl, we're at capacity at Butterfield?
We're over capacity.
Okay. No more portables or no more anything there?
13, 14 portables, it's more than we usually have. And we took that, we met with the city during that time, remember, and we wanted to leave them at Butterfield, you just barely paved, Marabella in. But we wanted to take more from that school so that we could reduce the number. And they're all on bus, so they're not in question, they'll be on a bus always. Anyone lower than, I think it's Gina Road,
Okay.
somewhere close there.
is that it?
Mayor, I think you asked a minute ago, or maybe it was Counselor Hodges, if there was a safe walking route. Yes. What you're looking at, that yellow line, is the safest walking.
The safest.
Right. It is not convenient, it's 3 miles long, but we have provided crossing guards at the cross on 64, where they go over the top and down. There was some question of whether or not there was sidewalk on the north side, thinking that they should walk up the north side of Herriman, and that's not happening.
Right.
They go over the hill and then, and maybe I shouldn't speak to this exactly, but they go down to a path that goes up, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they go
that's right.
through Main Street,
That's
they
right.
connect back into the path in the neighborhood, and then west to the school.
So to be clear, there is a safe walking route, that has been published,
Right.
so all the obligations have been met.
So hard.
If we moved it to the west of 7300, is there, it doesn't make it safer because of the other traffic congestion issues or the road issues with it?
I've got serious concerns about going to the west for our crossing guard safety and the children, and Zach can probably speak more clearly to that, cause he's gone up and surveyed it a couple, in, early morning hours.
We have line of sight issues coming off of 111 down through Butterfield.
Yeah, they're going
Canyon up
skiing,
and
yeah.
over. That's all in that same area. You got the two entries into high country. It's just a bad spot, one for the kids, but also for our crossing guard.
And what about in the future, is that where the crossing's gonna come down to?
It'll come down to
Danville,
Danville.
Come down
Come
to
up the
Danville.
south side and then,
Yep, and then across, and then all the way straight shot. to the-
There's just far too much risk for a crossing guard to be up there and putting kids out
especially
the
with the
road.
sun right in your face.
Yeah, it's a
and
bad
the-
idea, it's a super bad idea.
And beyond that, gives us 12 calendar days, to put anything in time for school to start. I don't think you could get it in to put the crossing guard there. You're gonna have to open the school with the way it is here, the walking route. Because with the sidewalks, people are out there, there's pieces missing still, driveways are missing, they're extending water. Doing like what Bryce said, sections are missing, sections are still poured. You'd still need lights, everything else in.
And we are prepared for Danzy, so there is a crossing guard that wasn't in place on 64. That person will move right up to Danzy the second we get the go-ahead.
And they'd be walking right along.
Right.
Along the construction zone.
And we've talked a lot about, well, all we need is a sidewalk. That's not true. If we put a sidewalk in the middle of construction zone, it's still not safe.
Yeah.
So we need to have all these other factors. When engineering
That's
says now
dead
it is
center of the
safe for us
construction
to
zone,
be in
yeah.
that area, then that's when we would put kids there.
So really tonight, there's just the one question, and there's a lot of history, but the question is,
Yeah,
are
we
we
need to
supporting
leave the history out,
this
or
or?
it's just, it's no use being, that's.
Say that, to me, the issue is simple for today, right? We all planned on the road being done and that crossing being in action. For start of school, that's not gonna happen because of a property owner who said they were gonna cooperate and then didn't, and we're still in court with them. We're still in court with them, right? It's still not settled. It's not our fault, it's not the school district's fault. We all know what happened last night. Try not to go into all of that. Some silliness, just to use Sherry's words. So we're being asked to foot some of this bill. To me, this is, we're just looking at money, right? No get the kids there safely, do the shuttle, fantastic. We're being asked to pay for something when we've foregone millions and millions of dollars in transportation funds just for that school. If we bring that up again, what was it, close to $380,000 just for transportation fees? I think the school district has plenty of our money. Right? Pay us the $380,000, I'll pay for 100% of your safety shuttle.
Let's go to statute. Who's responsible for transportation of children?
That's a good question. So in Utah Code 41-68303, it talks about the local highway authority and what they're obligated to do. Subsection 3 starts that for all reduced speed zones, from my understanding with talking with engineering, that this would be a reduced speed zone at this point. So the rest of the section doesn't apply, but even if it did, it states that the local highway authority shall, 1, provide shuttle services across highways for schools children, or provide, train, and supervise school crossing guards in accordance with this section. To my understanding, even though we're not required to have crossing guards at this section because it's not a reduced speed zone, we're still gonna have crossing guards in compliance with this section. And then there's another subsection in this that says that we have to pay for the crossing guards.
So that, to my understanding, that's just for the section of roadway we would shuttle them across from point A to point B. Say like Mountain View corridor from one side to the other.
Right.
Right? And so this would be just to get them across Main Street. Or provide a crossing guard.
Right. Correct.
So if I'm restating this correctly, our obligation under law, and we'll talk about the rest of this, but our legal obligation ends at providing the crossing guard there.
Correct.
And we don't even have to do that because it's not a reduced speed zone.
Correct.
So we're actually meeting our current legal obligation here.
Correct.
Okay. I'll just say this and I'll let anybody else debate what they want. There's really one driving factor here above everything else, and that is the calendar. There are 12 days before school starts. We don't meet again before school starts. The Jordan School District Board doesn't meet again before school starts. And there is no other meeting or other time for us to work out the details. Or any counter proposals or
Or even
any
do a budget
alternatives.
amendment or do anything like
Yeah,
that.
I mean, we're in a tough spot there. And so even if we, as without a special city council meeting, we can't amend the budget to pay for anything at this point. Not out of this meeting, we can't. So I guess I have a suggestion that we find a way to fund what we need to fund to get us time to have another conversation about this. And then we'll figure out what to do to bridge the rest of that gap. I'm just not comfortable, because here's the thing. If we don't provide the shuttle and we say you have to take that safe walk route, the kids are not going to walk 3.5 miles to cross at.
It's not up to us to provide the shuttle. They're doing it and asking us to share some of the cost.
I got it. What I'm saying is if the shuttle is not provided, meaning the Jordan School District says unless Herriman pays half, we're not doing it. Just saying,
Have they said that?
Yes.
Yeah, they said that last night.
If that's where they're at and there's no shuttle, we're going to have kids playing Frogger across the street. Just,
Walking through the construction zone.
not that that's our responsibility per se, but that's what's gonna
Shame on
happen.
them.
Cause there is no way kids are going to go 40 minutes out of their way to walk this route.
Our parents did it, Steve, uphill.
Yeah. And again, I think above all, the public safety issue for the children right now kind of trumps everything else, at least for a short period of time. So my recommendation was to figure out how to come up with $10,000 and let's get us to the end of September and get this meeting to happen, get us all in a room together, and let's have a discussion. I think that there are substantial differences in information and interpretation of certain things regarding who's responsible for what. We can point fingers and say, you're responsible, you're responsible, you're responsible. I guess I'm recommending that as the Herriman City Council, we step up and we're not gonna let the children go without a shuttle over a $10,000 cost. If, I'm just, the fact that, and I don't wanna throw anybody under the bus, but the fact that Jordan School District said we're not gonna provide a shuttle if Herriman doesn't pay half.
Well, I
and put those children at
promised I was
risk
gonna
is
be
scary.
quiet on this, but that fact that if they've said that last night, if that's the case, Daryl, shame on every person in that room. And we will take I agree with Steve, we'll take the higher road and we will do what the school district should do and put the kids' needs above a few dollars.
Putting it on, the onus on us to make a decision under duress was is a challenge.
Ridiculous.
Well, especially that it wasn't an actual item tonight.
You said this last night, Daryl, and it's for the kids, for the safety, for the students. There was a lot of good content in that meeting, but there was some members, some of the new ones that were really tough and very egregious towards past council and past decision makers here. But, I agree with you, Steve. I think that we need to come up with a quick solution for the 2 months till the end of September. Although, being in this field of work, it's gonna be December, if not mid-January, before they close out. So,
There's
second
gonna, has
quarter.
to be a different discussion about how do we get from October 1 to January.
I think we're gonna have to try to think outside the box, cause I don't wanna end up at 28,000, that's my concern.
I think we're gonna surpass that, honestly.
And if that's what it gets to, we'll have to deal with it when we get there.
I think you're probably looking like 30,
Yeah, I think you're thinking
31 to
another 2 weeks off of
33,
that.
somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And
we make
who
them
knows,
toll
if we have
buses?
a winter like we just had, it could be
Well,
even more.
cause ridership increases once snow starts going.
Well, construction becomes more difficult.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
just,
Yep.
I mean, if there's a foot of snow and then you get another 10 inches 3 days later, and then, you know, it'll never clear up.
Mayor brought something up when we were talking contingency on construction. Is that something we can get funds from to?
The problem that Kyle, we talked about it, it's,
Yeah, I mean, I
Say
think it's
no.
the types of
Say no.
funds that we're using, these are,
Right.
I don't think you could use the contingency funds, we'd have to So the $11,013, which is what it takes to get you your first 30 days, that's 30 days worth of service. That's both in there, and then if you just take 15 and times it by 2. That's well within staff signing authority. If you want us to do something, we could probably figure that out and just, this agreement though is up to 65,000. That would be the entire year. So the school district did send us an agreement at about 2 or 3 o'clock this afternoon. So we did get it.
Mr. Reynolds.
So they wanna be paid by September 1st. Again, with as much money as we have waived, it felt insulting to be saying that we're not doing stuff for them as staff members, so.
I don't think
But
they're
we certainly
privy
we
to
can
that,
pay
though.
them.
I don't think they understand
I know they didn't.
that
They're
either.
gonna be.
That's what I'm saying, is I think between the organizations,
There's some disconnect.
there's some really profound
And that's what
differences in information and even understanding of the information that we share. We see it very different ways.
And that's where this,
the
education-
committee will, and that's.
And I don't
talking
wanna
Tracy
put
and-
I don't wanna put the safety of 100+ children at risk because these two organizations have some,
So I said, it's
Profound
well within
differences in
staffs.
opinions.
If you want us to move forward, we can start moving forward and we can come back to formally, who they had signing this. Well, even the 65,000 is probably within my authority.
So can we do what Steve suggested and try to figure a way to take care of 30 days? We're not signing this as it is,
no.
right? But take care of what we can until we can have that sit down and talk.
This is where we're
you know.
tough for this. I talked to Tracy today. I proposed this. Tracy's great with it, but again, they don't have a meeting to get a board, complete sign off. But I mean, I think the key, we've gotta have the safety shuttle. We've gotta have the safety shuttle right.
And we gotta push the wheel a little, 30, 60 days and then figure out where we're at, yeah.
I
Yeah,
think then
it's-
we
it's
get this
like
committee,
50 days,
I think this committee needs to meet early September.
We'll do our best to get it
Just,
set
you know,
up.
I mean, just as soon as possible. So we
Even
can
just
start.
Sherry, I, and a couple of the school board.
Even if we just start with the school,
Yep.
get that now without bringing in the regional right now.
Yep.
Let's have that meeting, let's try to, I think everybody after last night, if I could say the one thing, I think we're all ready to just, let's stop talking about the past. We've got to stop talking about the past. Does us no good. It does, cause it's not gonna change anything.
And our seats change so frequently that it's really tough. I mean, this started in 5 years ago, right? And back then, we were still doing handshake deals and I'll find the money.
And I tried to step back last night. You guys know I was frustrated last night too. I tried to step back. This is a unique situation. I don't think any of us anticipated this. I mean, it's hard. And to Sherry's point always is, it's not us paying for it, it's our taxpayers. The taxpayers are paying for it. It might come out of different.
it doesn't matter whether it's our pocket or
Yeah,
the school
that's-
district, it's the same thing,
And
but
I hate that it's coming out of,
Except they get a higher
I know what you,
percentage.
and
they get a lot more than we do.
I'm just saying, but
And from all the students that benefit from it.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, I think this is a tough position. I think I agree, I can't look at, if I'm sitting home watching that as a parent, I'm
I
saying.
can't believe that they made an ultimatum like that with kids' safety.
I think
I
it's,
just,
I think it came-
I'm just astonished by that.
I actually don't, from my take of it, I don't think they correlated what they were saying and the result of what they were saying. I don't think they went in their minds, but we don't care about children's safety, they better pay us or else.
I think it came down to similar
I
what
don't think
Steve was
that's what
saying.
it was.
I didn't get that intent either. It was more,
That's
we don't
the
have
result.
another,
Yeah.
we don't have another council, just like we're saying now, there's not another meeting before now. We've got to do something.
No.
We all have to know by tonight what we're doing on this. We can't,
And
school started,
I mean, that's even worse than the information I had coming into this meeting, so like I said earlier, and I agree with Steve, we'll take the high road, let's take care of the kids, and we'll work this out going forward, and we're not waiving another penny of anything ever, if you ask me.
okay, so on this issue, we have.
So again, staff, this is well within the signing authority we have, so.
So let me
that we
say,
talked about,
I know
if
you said
want us
30
to-
days, they asked for 30 days, we're already gonna be, by the time we
I
get,
say through
October.
through
I would like
September
to say-
30th, through the end of September.
Yeah.
So that the top two lines, the August and the September portion, you add those together, it's a little over 10 grand. Or a little under 10 grand.
Yep.
10,000 and what? $12 or something.
999.
So,
And I should give ample time to get together
Right.
and
And that, I think if we can, as a council, say we instruct
Give him
staff
authority
to move
get done.
forward to go do that. Let's get that, portion over to the school district, get the buses planned, that gives them a couple weeks to get their, driver and routes planned and all that stuff. It's still a rush for them, but I think we can get it under the gun. And let's punt to another conversation where we can resolve some of these
Just
bigger
looking to see if
issues.
everybody's nodding to make
So.
sure, okay, well.
So the only question I have is the school district gonna be okay to operate buses then if we're not obligated?
Sign this agreement, I don't know.
So,
There's,
I'll talk to Dr. Coffey, we'll see.
I think there's
No
an
way we
intention that
can
this is gonna go farther into the year. But this gives us the time to give more detail and discussion and see where construction's at in 30 days.
And I don't say this thing, I don't think we're just committing, I think this is just committing to, let's get through this and let's get all together to have another.
And look, out of that, we might decide we're gonna do it in 30-day increments, or maybe we'll say we'll do it through the end of the year. And if we end up sooner, you'll refund us that, I'm sure we can come to a reasonable agreement, it's just it seems like we've both drawn a line in the sand that neither one of us should pay for it. And that's not gonna be okay, the compromise of being 50% isn't, it sounds reasonable, but it doesn't necessarily take into consideration obligations of who's got what and all this history and all this other stuff. So I think we just need to get together and sort through some of that, so we can come to a little longer, more.
We're good.
to understand.
Okay.
Do it for the children.
Let's move on to 2.2,
I covered up my stuff.
Brother Herriman MOU.
I've been touching my hammer.
So in your packet
Notice I
was
slammed it shut when I said.
a draft MOU,
I don't wanna read it.
between the city and the Friends of Herriman. Chris is here today, he's our chair for Friends of Herriman, and they've already done a lot of really great work, and we're happy to have them partner with us on programs and activities. This is really just a starting basis, between the city and the Friends group to provide some parameters into what each other is doing, as far as what we're providing, what their responsibilities are, and those sort of things. We can run through it quickly if you want, or just open it up for your discussion and questions. There's a couple things that I thought about after the fact. One was just requiring them to hold their own insurance, which I would like to add to this MOU. So that was one of the things that.
All right.
I know, but it has to be.
Chris, I know it's gonna be really hard.
Is there any questions or suggestions? And, Todd and I will get together and.
I thought it incorporated
Details.
what my understanding of everything was anyway, I didn't have any objections.
I had a few.
Sorry.
What did I say earlier? Short.
Seriously? This is making up for 18 months of me not talking enough of these.
What you got?
I'm trying to scroll to it, I put past it. Now I'm in the strategic plan. I'm here. Explain to me number 7. Is that a,
7 is just holding them to their values and mission statement and making sure they're spending money in accordance with the state law.
because one of the members felt like it was. Okay, I'll read through it again. Are we gonna give this to them to have them kind of,
I've already sent it to Chris.
and then you're gonna kind of mark it up and bring it back with some ideas too?
We'll have to talk.
I
You can
don't
say
know.
one word,
You'll have to have
yes
a
or
chair.
no, it's a yes or no
So,
question.
yes, they're already starting
Okay.
to mark it up.
Okay, thank you.
Had to get 6 in there,
Can't do one.
I could talk to Chris like this for another week anyways.
So this brought up when we were touring the old city hall. And I didn't read it in here except facilitate events or programs or space. What about storage space or utilizing city buildings?
In number 3, is that what you're talking about? We
Yeah.
add some storage.
Yeah, cause they're gonna have, obviously, they're gonna be, is it number 3 or number 6, I think it was, so the.
Yeah, number 6, that's
Yeah.
it.
We can add some storage language there if you like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for bringing that up. I did have one question about, number 6. It's saying the space should be in good operational condition with the necessary utilities to operate. If their need for utilities exceeds what is provided at the facility, are we obligating ourselves to provide additional utility access?
I think we should reword that.
Well, cause you got power and
Yeah, I mean, well,
facilities and bathrooms.
I'm just,
Big event.
for example,
Good point.
at the pavilion, right, we talked about power needs and, Cat 6 cable needs and anchors for speaker needs and some of that kind of stuff, right? And if we're saying on here that,
We'll provide that, or
we're,
should be,
we're gonna give it to them with the necessary utilities to operate,
That's pretty broad.
yeah, that could obligate us to have to provide some additional things that they may desire or state as a necessary to operate, but we might have a different opinion, so.
Bob will come up with some language for that.
I wanna see, at this point, I do wanna see what they come back with too, cause I know a few people, so I wanna see them kind of put their heads together and see what they come back with as far as. Other than that, I think, yeah, I'd like to see what they come back with first. But I think the intent is there for sure, I think that.
How do you feel about the 3-year term?
Yeah, is that pretty, yeah, I think that's pretty
standard, yeah, 3 or 5, yeah.
Alright, well, then we'll move back to another work meeting.
And I know the one thing that will come up is, and we brought this up in the committee meeting last week, I know we set them that budget at that certain, but I do think I think there were other budget, maybe ancillaries here and there,
It was other what?
like ancillary items, like the printing that we talk about in here, that wasn't accounted for in that budget. I know that's one concern they brought up, that there were all these printing costs, but we didn't account that when we gave them their budget, we didn't add that.
We also didn't account for all the room reservations.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, so I know I want these guys to feel supported, that was kind of the big kind of feeling in there, is we just gotta make sure they do feel like, that we're not nickel and dime. I know the sound system, how we, there's concern about how we allocate that over.
It's not allocated, it's already
Done.
It's already done.
Is there gonna be there's not another cost next year?
Just sound text.
Okay.
That's the whole point.
Well, the question is, right now, there's $30,000 taken out each year.
That just first year?
That's
Just-
done.
just for the
And
first-
when it's done.
That's it, yeah?
There you
So
go.
that's estimated budget, next year will go up $30,000, because that wasn't my understanding.
You'll probably have to put in a request and justify it. There's not an automatic $30,000 increase, we have not, that staff planned that.
Because that's what it was taken out this year for the sound system, which since it's 2-year budget, I assume that was taken out next year for the same reason. Which means it would have been $62,000 taken out,
That's just one-time money.
so it was only 31 this year.
We're in the second year of the budget,
Oh, got
so
it,
we'll be doing it.
got it, okay.
Okay, that
I thought
actually,
it was first of the 2 years.
that's actually not, okay, that actually helps.
And I think that's important to clarify that because that money was taken out to pay for sound system doesn't automatically mean that it goes back in to be used for something else.
Because the justification was we would start saving funds.
Correct,
Right.
right,
Forward.
right, they were just,
Yeah.
yeah, like I said, it was just, we're still trying to get clarification this first year, it's just a lot of making sure we're all.
Which is why this is a good idea, right?
Yep.
Some basic, more or less some ground rules and basic understanding.
Okay, yeah, Chris, if you guys look at it then.
Yeah.
And I have all the printing costs and comparisons,
I'd love to see
that I
that
can send
actually.
over. We're very cheap comparatively, so. Send that over to you.
It's looking budgeted.
Okay, perfect, thank you, Wendy, and Todd for your work on that. Chris, for all you do.
Yeah.
Chris is gonna have a lot more schedule, just schedule.
Just say here.
2.3, discuss strategic plan in preparation for final adoption.
So really tonight, you had anything? If not, we're gonna bring it back to you. So one thing with this plan that I want council to start thinking about, and Jackie, is probably every February, council should look at it. One that gets you, if there's an election and a change in council, that gets that new council a chance to look at it very early in their process. But that's likely when we'll report, here's how we've done in the past year. This year will be very, somewhat short, because we've been working these, but we haven't gone all in case you change them tonight. So I just wanna explain some of the ground rules. That's how I'm envisioning these working. There's also this, what we call a tactical plan. It's how we're, how to eat the elephant one bite at a time. It's the one bite plan. How do we actually get from point A to point B? What are those logical steps? Staff has been working on that. They've kind of taken a little bit of hiatus until we say, if council says, yeah, this works for right now, we'll go all in that. But council should also realize this, while it's great to have a plan and keep working on it, we do have to review it probably annually to make sure it still meets. One, it meets what you want, and second, the things we're doing are actually moving the organization, the community in that direction. Right, so there's the discussion, we'll, as we go through this, as we find things that are effective, then we'll work at, how do you make that more efficient, how do you do more of that? If we find that we do it really well, but it makes no difference, then we'll come back and say we need to reprioritize resources, because what we're doing here, we can do it really well, but it doesn't do what we think it's doing. It's not moving us forward. So that's the plan. So I'm gonna shut up now. I have a hard time doing that. And let you guys, if there's anything you want to change, if you don't feel like you can, if you just email me if you have suggestions or things you would like to see in there. Prior to,
I'd prefer the color scheme be red, not blue.
I second that motion.
we'll go with a neutral,
It's solid community college
purple.
colors.
We have U campus too.
We'll go with a jazz
Yeah, you
color
should've
or
come
something
to
like that.
Purple.
I hope we're talking about school colors there.
I think it's great, get it in place and
I love it.
then we
I
can
think
start.
absolutely.
If I could just make one comment, the fact that you were able to create this out of the meandering, crazy conversations we've had over so much time is pretty impressive, because as I read through it, I was like, yeah, that's what we said. So
I
that's
should
right,
say,
that
this
was
is
good.
my
I thought
staff.
it was,
Wendy
it was
and
pretty dang good.
Blake, all the way down, I'm gonna forget you can look at everybody, they've all had their hands in it and their staffs below them. So, thank you for the compliment, I will accept it on their behalfs, but they've been working on it.
Good job,
So
everybody.
it's-
You get a trophy. I thought it was perfect. I absolutely thought it was.
There was so many, like, some of the key sub points and stuff, I'm like, that's really well articulated. I know we've probably said something like that in
That's
a
John.
meeting 4 months ago and 9 months ago and
John-
2 years
yes.
ago
I
and,
forgot,
yeah.
John has
That's all
done
John.
a ton, and John probably picked the blue, thank you, John.
He's red though.
I'll fix it.
I think
sorry.
the tactical plan is red though, for most of what I remember seeing, so maybe we were trying to
To balance
divide
that out.
that, balance that, by having both.
It's purple.
Boy, I thought we'd get it.
I don't know what you're talking about, I just, red's easier on the eyes, so just saying. But,
Red is
well done.
action, red
Well
is
done.
action.
Perfect. Well done.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your work.
You
I don't know
wanna
if I
start
could-
this
I-
other one, or do you
Go
like?
ahead. I'm sorry.
Are we that close?
I think having a time constraint on chief is a really good plan.
I'm actually doing the top.
I don't know if it's cheap.
It started, we can always continue.
I think this is a good strategy to say, you got 16 minutes, 18 minutes, you go for it, you know?
Okay, if Mayor, if you're ready, I'll start too, chief can jump in, there's
I don't
others
know
who've
if I should do
been
that.
involved.
Give you 17 minutes.
Our best
Go,
auctioneer
Chief.
voice. We got Trevor here as well, who we can look at some things. So there were a lot of questions about how we staff, all the, and a lot of this is in your staff report, so I'm just gonna hit highlights here and, see if there are filled questions that we need to be able to answer or show at the time we do the, truth and taxation. So there's no decision today. we went through the numbers, we looked at our things. I will say, and you probably all heard me, that when you figure out how many officers you have per thousand, you now know how many officers you have per thousand. That's about all it tells you. It's an interesting statistic. It really doesn't correlate to crime rates really well, but the FBI does it because they needed some sort of statistic. So we have 0.6. We are on that lower end, but a lot of our competitors are all well below 1. Salt Lake
Below
City
us.
and some of those are quite high. Yeah, we are. 0.65 versus 0.64. We're again, and this is based off of our census population. It's a discussion for another day, and we can explain how we got there. We handle more calls, so I should say calls for service is also an interesting statistic, but not all calls are created equal. So, a fight in progress at a bar with weapons requires that's important to get there really fast.
My dog's barking at something behind the fence.
Or, hey, I came home, I've been on vacation for 2 weeks, and I think somebody stole my lawnmower. Getting there in 2 minutes or 4 minutes doesn't change the fact so when we look at these calls, it's their priority one. They've gone through a bunch of different names over the years, but, because we no longer do, Uniform Crime Report, UCR, we're now NIBRS or something. which
Your
stands
NIBRS,
for-
they still have UCR, but it's NIBRS compliant, yes.
It's NIBRS compliant. It's how you report crime. So calls for service, we handle a lot. Handle a lot of calls. When you get down to this one, you'll see of the kinds that we're handling. A lot of property, some of the
Traffic.
society ones, a lot of traffic. We're not as high as some of the others, but we're kind of in that middling realm, it feels like. And which is why we're kind of orange. There really hasn't been the crime rate itself hasn't changed, because that's a function of crimes per population, but as our population grown, of course, our crime has increased, but it's been increasing about in proportion with the population. That would say, way to say that.
Question, what's the date or time frame on this? Because that's the only thing you're
Which
missing on
one
the
did
table.
we-
Talking about the charts,
Yeah,
that's all 2022 data,
that's all, that's a full year.
the full
Correct.
calendar
Okay.
year
The
2022.
last year that we had,
Okay.
and so we could get from our peer cities.
Yep.
And then, this is really interesting, is our calls for service have increased about 20% per year since 2019.
Is that
So if
because
you-
we have our own police force now?
Um,
Or is that?
I think
So-
it could be that, and it's also, I think, population.
Correlation is not causation. I'm
Well,
just-
because we're actually responding
So,
and we're
no,
presence
well,
or?
it is true that when you have your own police department, and we were told this anecdotally, as you'll remember, that you're gonna get called more, it was true. We went up about 30% immediately, and what it is the citizens that they've talked to me said, well, you're our police department, if we called the old police department, they charged us, right? So people didn't do that to a contract agency, because they thought, oh, it's gonna cost us more money.
Yeah.
So it was a misunderstanding, but
Quite
we,
frankly, the other one didn't respond and people
Yeah, they
just
charge
stopped.
us anyway, so.
but we have seen an increase in calls, and it is a product of a
I
growing
think it's
city.
a population
Yeah.
growing a
This
lot.
20% is probably population,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I think there's, some weird things that came out of COVID and changing that. We were also asked, how do we determine when we grow? And, kudos to the police. There is a group, and if you read the staff report, you talk about these metrics that are come up with. Chief was already tracking a lot of this, and so it's been really easy to say, okay, well, how do we take these statistics, the things we've been trying to track, and determine when we grow? And so in a police department, you have your administration, that side. The pressures in there are different than patrol. A lot of you have heard this already. So they've come up with a plan. It's one of your attachments where they start tracking, okay, the hours, the number of records. We hired another records person last year because coming out of COVID, people have decided they love requesting records from police departments to the tune that it doubled. So that's one of the kind of things we would watch in this area. So a lot of them are based on percentage. The idea of these triggers are that triggers the discussion to start. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden we're in a crisis. It just means, okay, let's start. We see this trend is going in a certain way. So that's true of all of these. Operations, this is that 60, we added 460. There's 360s in the study I sent you. That's didn't attach, but it is available from the Center for Public Safety Management. And I emailed it to council a week or two ago.
That was
Verse
riveting,
60.
by the way.
I thought it was really interesting when I read it the first time back in the day, and I've had a lot of conversations with chiefs of police with it. Some,
Chief had
at
already-
least
Chief already gave away
Chief
the ending
Carr,
before it was got
Chief
done,
Carr
so-
and I are kind of statistics nerds, so that kind of works out. We like that stuff. First 60 are 60% of your agency forward facing. Are they citizen facing? So that's something we track, and we're at 70.
We're 76.
So right now, they might say, well, you're a little high, but that's kind of their baseline. If you get below that, if you're at 40% forward facing, that means 60% of your people, your sworn officers who we're tracking, don't interact directly with citizens. That is a backward you're in trouble if you're there. And they did this, if you read that study, they looked at 62 organizations, some doing well, some poorly. And that was the number said when the organizations were doing well, at least 60% of their officers were out working with the public, not in special assignments in an office. So we're meeting that one. The second one, for your patrol divisions, are you at 60% committed time or below? 60% is kind of this sweet, probably like 50 to 60 is where you're okay. As you get to 60 and above 60, you're starting to become overcommitted. That means your officers with all their duty time and all that we take off, their lost time. 60% of the time they're on a call. That other percentage of the time they're not. They're writing reports. They're doing other things that are necessary. A lot of the times you're trying to get them to be proactive. So maybe they're driving around aimlessly doesn't help, but the officers know, hey, we've had some vandalism over at Juniper Crest Park, so I'm gonna go drive, if I'm in that district, I'm gonna go drive by that park. So it allows them to be proactive and not just reactive. So that's kind of an interesting statistic. We track that now. This one is, are your calls, your time per call 60 minutes or less? So in certain really more violent crime cities, you hit that really quick. We're below that, but that's another statistic you watch. This is a Herriman specific one, this last 60, but it deals with our kind of ink blot boundaries we have. You know, in the
Geography.
They show you that it's geography, right? We have this strange boundary, and we're really kind of stretched. What we're trying to show here is within this the blue shading, was it 60% of the time, or there's some confidence
60%
interval,
of the time, 6
we can get there within 6 minutes, even if we're at the extent. So we're trying to, if you have how many cars, can you get to those important calls fast? And so we went 6 minutes, recognizing that on response time, there's also some time at dispatch. So maybe a little longer feeling for the citizen, but this is a number we're trying, can we get there?
So, but this is drive time, so you get it, takes you that.
Correct. So we looked at it, and it's interesting, you see, as this city grows this way, it's going to we're gonna have to pull resources this direction. Same with this, right? We're a growing city. Those will stretch and pull, and right now we have 4 districts. It could be 4, it could end up being 2, like super districts with more. Districts, beats, however the police want it. There's a lot of different ways they may tackle that, but we're trying to use this understanding of our roadways and how they work to determine where is the best place you need to put your police officers.
And to your point, Councilman, we do actually track both. We track the drive time, but we also track the total dispatch time, especially on priority 1 calls, because although we don't necessarily control that time at dispatch, we are held accountable for it. by our citizens. So we track both of those metrics independently.
So most of the time, we report that full thing, cause what does the citizen feel as opposed to when I get the call?
Just, it's 20 minutes regardless on the phone, whatever the price is.
And Nathan, if we can talk about the 60 here, there's a couple different ways police departments distribute their resources, right? One of them is calls for service, one of them by population. We decided that the very most important thing that's our responsibility is to get to a call fast. Nothing else matters if we can't get there quickly, right? So as we develop this, and nobody else has developed this, and very few police departments in the nation are growing in a city as quick as us, right? Our city is growing super quick. They don't have this, the growth silo that you'll see they don't have. We've created that for the city. We believe that last 60 that we created is probably the most important 60 of everything, right? Being able to get a cop on a doorstep is the most important thing we do.
So all this goes together really on that operation side. How do we make sure, frankly, that's really where our citizens see the most interaction. This next group, these are your detectives, school resource officers, all those things. They'll have their own metric. For detectives, it's, the number of cases assigned. And there's probably more nuance to that as well because the types of cases really matter. So it's not like a hard line. If it's 30 cases, that's good. If you have 25 shoplifts, those are, in other cities, those are easy. I don't know if they're easy here. Those are kind of like the burn and, but if you have then an assault or a sexual assault or domestic violence, those take a lot more time because they're a lot more nuanced. And so we have this statistic, so that's how our Herriman Police Department is looking at their growth silos. So it's not just based on population. I will say we use population growth, we've talked about, it's probably a proxy for when we think we're going to trip things. But it may not be that it's by this date, it has to be because we hit this population number. These other underlying factors will drive that, not the just pure population growth.
Nathan, can we talk about the SRO real quick as being
Oh, yeah.
kind of that one outlier?
Yeah.
Do you want me to?
Yeah.
Okay. So in Zach's division, Special Services, we have this school resource unit. And for the metric and trigger for that, it's really simple. You build a school that's a secondary school, there's a cop there. So those are those things that we don't control that are outside of all these other things we look at. Jordan School District comes in and builds us a junior high or high school, that's a cop. So that's the trigger for that one specifically, and that's really one of those outliers that we don't control that.
And that's actually an easy one to track.
And that is statutory, right? So we've gotta have that in place.
There was a question about our compensation, in this model. This is both our green and our blue daughter here. That's this is a percent off of this. It's not, in your staff report, I talked to you about how much that is, how many units. We're kind of smack right in the middle. There's a large clump right here around that $45 to $46. That's most of our agencies. Your South Salt Lake, your West Valley, eventually Salt Lake City's gonna jump up here. They'll all be up here. Whether they're paying up there, I don't know if they have those senior officers, but it's, even with our last increase, it's still, we're still in the, about at the median of the pay. But it's a pretty compressed group right there. This is fairly compressed. So we're trying to stay competitive in the market. We're not trying to lead the market. We wanna be competitive in the market. And there are multiple things leading to these increases, but one primarily being changing demographics. There aren't as many people interested in becoming police officers. We're not adding, we are retiring more police officers than we're bringing in nationwide. So you'll see that pressure continue, and the individuals you're recruiting into police departments are the same ones the U.S. military is trying to recruit, and you see they're struggling right there. Those people.
There is a definite labor shortage in this industry.
Yes.
We spent a lot of time talking about the top end of the market too. One thing to consider and something that we're paying attention to as we move forward is our entry level wage and where we're at competitively, particularly in our Wasatch Front market, because that impacts our ability to recruit new officers into the profession as well.
And I'll say, I get chewed out by this city manager, I won't say it out loud, all the time, because they're on our border, and Utah County doesn't pay anywhere near what Salt Lake County, what that market is doing. They're gonna have to catch up, because you're starting to see more and more Utah County law enforcement move up this direction.
We got a lot of vehicles in this city as I drive through it.
Live there, work here.
We can pause here if you wanna stop and come
That's a
back.
good point, yeah,
and
let's
complete.
stop too.
I'm gonna, so we'll just pause there, and
I can move out of the fan for a minute.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
It's a little cool.
it's something.
Say, where I'm sitting is
It's-
perfect.
I know,
Yeah, I'm
me
like,
too.
I'm good.
This side's good.
I sit right here, it can be cold sometimes.
I knew you would.
There's only two temperatures in here.
My
we
eyes
can
are
decide,
better.
right?
Cold, freezing, or hot. And I said, there's like a 30
Motion
second
to
moment.
temporarily recess work meeting to adjourn in general meeting.
Sorry about that.
Forgot this stuff.
I got you.
It's been a minute, right?